is Haley and I go to Hills Elementary.
My name is Lavanis and I go to Kirkwood.
My name is Siobhan. I go to Hoover Elementary.
I read Sailor's Delight.
The story of my book is Lavanis the Ninja.
I read a poem called Wintertime.
I like to read fiction stories because they're fake and it's funny.
I can't decide if I like nonfiction or fiction.
I prefer to read fiction because it allows me to go off into a whole different world and have an adventure.
Well, first when I get ready to write, I first come up with a good idea. And then when I write my story, sometimes it has to be really quiet so I can concentrate on my story.
Well, I write every day in school, and I just kind of think about my previous stories that I've written and just take kind of bits and pieces from them and make a whole different story.
I like to write about anything, really. I like to write about what happens in my life, what's special, and because it's special.
I would rather write both fiction and nonfiction because so readers can see how what kind of stories I can write with nonfiction and fiction.
I prefer to write fiction because I can write whatever I want, whatever I'm in the mood for. I can write about fictional creatures and yeah.
My favorite book is Holes and Esperanza Rising because Holes is cool and it's really nice, and Esperanza Rising is about this girl that has to move away because she was rich and then she goes really poor and she learns how to be a maid and stuff.
Books are like the Harry Potter series and The Diary of a Wimpy Kid and lots more.
Well, my favorite book has got to be Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein because he is just a wonderful poet. He can write any poem about anything.
I read every night for about 20 to 30 minutes.
I don't read much, but because I don't like to read that much, but I really like to do math and stuff.
I read every day for 2 hours, spread out.
My name is Jordan Fajardo-Bird and I go to Shimmick Elementary.
My name is Nina and I go to Horn Elementary.
My name is Imani Williams and I go to Grantwood Elementary.
I wrote Letitia by me.
I read In the Blink of an Eye.
My poem is called Love.
I like fiction a lot more because you still learn things, but it's not like straight out giving you. And also you can kind of like travel and just put yourself in the character's shoes.
I like nonfiction diaries because I like to see the world in a different point of view.
I like to read nonfiction books because it makes you like more characters.
I don't write that often, only really at school, and usually I usually write. What I do to prepare is I'll brainstorm ideas and I'll write those down, and I think of things that would be good for the story and like plan out scenes.
I write almost every day, and I get ready to write by looking at my junk-filled walls.
I look around the rooms and the houses and see what there is to write about.
It's kind of a tie because I write a lot more nonfiction at school, but book responses and things like that. But I like to write fiction a lot more because I can kind of take my personal experiences and put it into the character, and I can really relate to the main character that I write.
I prefer to write fiction because I guess my walls inspire me to write fiction.
I like to write nonfiction because you get to make up your own characters. You get to, like, if you wanted to illustrate, you could illustrate your own character and describe how your character looks.
My favorite book is probably The Hunger Games, the series. I'm in the second one because it really grabs your attention, and when you start, you don't want to stop, and it just keeps you reading, and it doesn't drop you where you read the first one and you just want to stop the series. It wants you to keep reading all 3 books.
I like the series of Unfortunate Events because the way it was written was different than other books.
My favorite book is Smile because it makes you think twice about what you do and how you do it.
Every day because usually I have some pretty good books, and usually I just like to read, and if I feel like reading, I can really get intrigued with my book and just read continuously.
I read a lot. I read every time I get a chance to read.
I read about 3 times a day, in the morning at school, in the afternoon at school, and the night at my house. But I only really read at school with my friend Lilia Raymond.
My name is Anjali, and I go to Roosevelt Elementary.
My name is Hayden, and I go to Lincoln School, and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Elizabeth Davis, and I go to Regina Elementary.
I read The Mystery of the Missing Necklace.
My story, it's more of a poem actually, is called The Thanksgiving Toad.
I wrote a poem called Snow for Tracy the Kitten.
I prefer fiction, but I like reading both fiction and nonfiction. And I think I like fiction better because you get to imagine places that you've never been to and stuff like that.
Well, I prefer to read fiction because there are things you can do that can be done in fiction that, things that are like science fiction, that create ideas that really can't be explained can be explained in nonfiction but can't be used in nonfiction because they're too futuristic to be put in nonfiction because they just can't be done, and you can put it in fiction.
Well, both have their pros and cons, but overall I really prefer fiction because, if it's fiction, the stories just can be more interesting because they're not limited to reality.
Well, I write at least 1 journal per day, if not more, and I usually get ready to write. I usually sit at my desk when I'm writing, and I just try to choose a topic.
To get ready to write, I go into my room because it's a quiet place, and I sit down at my desk and I write down whatever comes to me. If I'm writing a story that I've been working on, I try to add to it, make it more interesting, add interesting scenes to it, and I don't really have a schedule for writing. I write whenever I can. I write whenever I get an idea or whenever I have time to write.
I write whenever I can, and I don't really have any special routines for writing or anything. I just need something to write on and something to write with.
Probably fiction because I think I'm just better at writing it. I'm good at imagining things.
I prefer to write fiction because it's just easier to write fiction. You have things you can do in fiction that you can't do in nonfiction, and I can write nonfiction, but I prefer fiction.
When I write poetry, I really like writing nonfiction, like things about nature or real events that have happened, but writing stories or just writing for fun, I like writing fiction and quite often realistic fiction, like the poem I wrote.
My favorite book is it's called The Private Thoughts of Amelia E. Rye by Bonnie Shimko. And it's about a girl it's in the 1960s, I think. It's about a girl whose mother isn't exactly the nicest mother that you could have, and her dad ran away with another woman before she was even born. And she finds this woman again, and she isn't sure how to feel about her. Plus, her mother is very prejudiced, and she becomes friends. Her only friend is a dark-skinned girl who is very nice to her.
My favorite book is Radiance by Alison Noel, and my second favorite is the sequel. It's told from an interesting point of view, and the distinct literary style is really the way I think the main character would think.
Well, I read pretty much every day, an hour at the least. I'm crazy about reading.
Normally I read from 9 o'clock at night to 10:30 p.m. every night before I actually go to sleep. And this has been something that's been going on for quite a while, and I just do it so I can read. And I always do it every day, and it's my reading time for most of the day.
I read all the time. If I have a book, I'm going to read it. Unless I'm reading a series and I haven't read the book before that book, then I won't read that book.